This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. A lot of insurance needs. And they do a great job of saving you money wherever they can. Because customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. All right, so let's bring in the outstanding, incomparable, and our good friend, Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome back.
As always, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, a question I always ask you before free agency begins is always about the setup of what free agency can then mean to how a team drafts. Based on what the Steelers did in free agency, how do you think that shapes their draft?
I think that the obvious, I don't know if you want to call it priority, but I think the draft can kind of be the result of what they did in free agency, depending on what you're looking for. In the Steelers' case, I think one priority for them, and they knew this when they let Larry Ogunjobi go, was they wanted to get better along their offensive line, and better in some cases means younger. You can find younger players in free agency to help fill in, but typically you're not finding, an heir apparent to a player like Cam Hayward out in free agency. So my thought would be they would want to invest a premium pick in a defensive tackle, and they felt pretty good about the ability of one falling to them at 21 overall. They were in on the pursuit of Jonathan Allen, a player that I know from back in the day, that they were definitely very interested in drafting him. I think that was back in 2018 when he was draft eligible. The Minnesota Vikings signed him. The Steelers weren't able to get him. I think, though, they still wanted to add a bit to their defensive line. And in that, it's an example of kind of one hand almost washing the other. But you need to kind of see how free agency is going to play out. What happens out there, because who knows when it opens up, depending on the strength of the market for a player, he might go for a bit cheaper than they would have thought he would have. They'd be happy to pay him what he was looking for. That's a player they didn't expect to sign available to them. That might alter their draft plans a little bit, but by and large they have kind of an overall perspective of where they want their team to grow. And that includes free agency as well as the draft. Now, neither of those things are anything that you can say for certain, this is what we're going to do. But this is what they're aiming for, and they adjust based on whatever it is that comes up. They do want to have any major holes patched before they head into the draft, giving them more ability to look down the road a little bit more as opposed to this coming year. But the roster is fluid. They always add and subtract throughout the year. They've got a 90-man limit right now. They're going to sign a bunch more players. They still have the cash and the cap space to be able to do that. So what they're looking in the draft is really just to get the best players that they can to come in, not necessarily for this season, But for 2 years, 3 years down the line, where are they going to be? Your younger players, the guys that, Mike Tomlin would kind of classify as the ones that play the entire preseason games for the first couple of years, they're going to be the future foundation of the team, and they're still building that out. Those younger players are still developing, even as they bring more of them in. They didn't get, for example, they didn't get anything from Roman Wilson last season. He's going to be a player that hopefully can fill in a spot and play a fairly productive role for them this year. He's somebody they counted on probably more for 2-3 years down the line as opposed to his rookie year. Does that mean they need to address the receiver position again? With the what seems to be the likely departure of George Pickens after this season, I'd imagine they'd probably want to, whether that's with their typical second or third round pick like they often do with receivers, remains to be seen. But it would seem to me that they could get one in round 3, which is their second pick in this draft, pending they don't trade anything up. So with that, you want to map out a plan overall to address your future needs within the draft and more of your immediate needs and depth with free agency. But there's a pretty thin line between those two things, and you're looking to capitalize with the premium picks as early as you can to get guys that can play right away.
Right, and that's going to be important moving forward. So here we are on the 8th. Draft's a couple of weeks away. Is that essentially the timetable on any Aaron Rodgers decision, pro or con?
That's kind of what I figured. I would honestly say the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that he would sign. I would think even Aaron Rodgers would feel wrong about taking that long to let him know that he was retiring, or he just simply didn't want to sign with the Steelers. So I think he would have come to that decision a little bit quicker. So my guess would be, leading up to the draft, we'll hear about it. He has his reasons. I could speculate probably more pessimistically than optimistically why he's doing that. But truthfully, they're not playing next week. They don't need their quarterback right now. So in the grand scheme, it's annoying, but it's not detrimental to a large degree. Let's see what happens, though. I'm not shutting the door on it, but it would seem to me more likely than not that he's signing with the team the longer that it plays out. And, I would say, the day before round 1 starts would probably be a real deadline because if that's the case, the Steelers might need to go out and get a starting quarterback in the draft. That could change, philosophically everything they're trying to do. I don't think that's the case, though, so I think they'll get him, and I wouldn't rule out quarterback, a position that they look at. If they could get one that, perhaps falls in value in round 1, maybe, execute some type of trade to get into round 2 to take one. Wouldn't surprise me if they go quarterback with one of those premium spots. But I think Rodgers is the plan to be their starting quarterback this season.
As you mentioned, as of right now, they only have one pick on day 2. How do you reevaluate day 2 once round 1 is over with based on all the picks?
I think it will obviously depend on who was taken, but I think to some degree you kind of look at the diminishing level of who's available. That kind of reassesses the value of it. I don't know if I should say this in Penn State country, but to me, I think a great example is Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah,
I think Pat Freiermuth, or excuse me, not even Pat Freiermuth, Jesse James was the guy that I was thinking of. Either one of them, though, there were players that were taken maybe a little bit earlier than some people thought they were going to be taken, but there wasn't anything after them. And in both of those years, I forget when Jesse James was taken, 2017, 2016, somewhere in there. Yeah. They absolutely needed to get a tight end. They really wanted to prioritize the development of a tight end. And James was in that year, he was the last one. I don't think another one was taken until the 7th round after him in the 5th. They needed to get him. A lot of people said he's probably not worth that high of a pick, but it's a position they wanted to fill. It's a role they wanted to fill. It's a player they felt comfortable with. I think definitely exceeded the value of that pick in his time in the NFL. He played for a long time in the NFL. He's a very serviceable player. Mm-hmm. Freiermuth, a lot of people said second round was probably too high for him for what they were going to be. What people don't understand, the Steelers didn't have a 3-down tight end on their roster at that point. The cap space that they did have, which was limited considerably by two things. One, the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger, which meant to them they've got $40 million against the cap for a quarterback that isn't going to play for them, and the post-pandemic salary cap, payback that came that season. They were really limited, and they had three positions they absolutely had to get to play and play a lot. It was running back, which they took first in the first round with Najee Harris, then tight end, who was Fryman was in the second round, and then unfortunately the Kendrick Green experience going in the third round as a starting center. So at that point, that was a unique draft for the Steelers looking back on it. But the value of the position, and people will often say, well, just take the best player available. That's arbitrary anyway. Your best player available is not my best player available, and it has to depend on team need. You can't just draft the top of Mel Kiper's board in every single round. You're not going to balance out your team for that season or for the future. So depending on what happens in the first round or what they're able to do, and they're also looking to trade up, trade down, whatever might come up. They want to address certain positions. They're looking to fill certain positions, and if these players are available in these rounds, they'll look to take them. So it really depends, I think, on what is going to fall to them at 21 to kind of set everything up. And it's a polar opposite draft from last year. 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first 12 picks. This year, there might be one in the first 12 picks. There might be one in the first 20 picks. If it happens to be the case, I don't think that it will, but it's not entirely impossible. If Shedeur Sanders falls to 21, I would think the Steelers would be interested. I can't say that's probably going to happen, and I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans aren't going to be happy to hear that. But if that's the case, though, I think you change your plan and kind of say, look, we didn't expect this to happen. And at the same time, I feel, and you and I have talked about this a lot, Steve, I think this happened with Troy Fautanu last year. I don't think they expected to take a tackle at 20 overall or wherever they were. But the run on quarterbacks was a lot more significant than people thought that it would be, and that knocked some players back. And I think with that, Fautanu, a player in my mind, was much better than 20, 21, 22 overall. I forget where he was taken. He should have been a top 15 guy. You want to capitalize on that when you have that opportunity. So that's kind of, simply put, what it means is you have to let the draft come to you, and from there kind of see, what your needs are and what fits best with where you're selecting in each round. And the last round and everybody before that sets up where you are for your next pick.
Yeah, and again, to me, it's always about, what do I need? And maybe I'm playing a little chess about what I may need a year from now. When does that enter into the conversation?
That's the interesting question. And people always say this. To me, without getting too in the weeds with this, it's the draft is a science and an art. But the thing is, what people need to understand is you can't compare one draft to the next draft. The dynamic part of it is the players, not the teams. You don't know what's available year in and year out. And, I know that everybody knows that, but that has a significant impact on everything that you're doing. You can't plan and prepare for something to have a strategy every single year when the parts are always different. Right. That's like planning on a race that you want to do these things in your car, but you drive a different car every time. You're not able to have kind of a static dynamic in place to plan on. So what they want to do and what's available is dependent upon their team now and where they want their team to be. That, though, when you put it all into the draft, is completely dependent on who's available. If there are only 2 draftable tight ends available, you either get one of those tight ends or you're going to draft a guy that, your scouts tell you isn't even worth the draft pick. And things like that have happened, and they do happen quite often. A player, just because he plays this position, and he's, again, not to rip on Mel Kiper, but just because he's 6th on Mel Kiper's big board for the position does not mean that he's worth an NFL contract. That's the scout's job to determine. So they have to look at the whole picture. What does this class look like? What does it look like next year? What does free agency look like next year? There are pro scouts, the ones in the organization that are scouting other teams, other players who are already in the league. They're the ones that you're looking for free agency. Just keeping files on guys, knowing that you scouted them at one point, staying updated on who they are in case an opportunity ever comes up to sign them. And you have your college scouts; those are the ones who obviously are scouting college. That's built more for the draft. You put all those notes together, and you get a sense of what's coming, what's going to be available in the future, and that has to play into your decision as well. And it goes up against the idea that there's a limited, a finite amount of resources at each of these positions. Tight end 4 in 2024 does not mean tight end 4 in 2025. It's not the same player. You don't know exactly where it's going to be, and you have to make decisions based on a dynamic environment, and that makes it a lot more, artistic than anything else. What's your best guess that's coming up? Where do you think you'll be to get a player like this? What does this position group look like in the future? There's a lot that you have to calculate, and that's the stuff a general manager is constructing, and your scouting department is really what kind of drives the engine of all of that. And it's a matter of how you're evaluating them and how accurate you are based on the amount of time and work that you've put in to getting to know that player, understanding their game, and kind of figuring out who and where this player might fit in with what you're trying to do.
Yeah. When you look at the draft, when you're watching it, how many notes are you taking and so forth when it comes to the draft on draft day itself?
It's funny you say that. I was just talking to my staff. And one thing I was telling them is, first and foremost, don't be a scout, because you're not.
Right.
If you want to accurately report what's going on, you need to know the basics of the player. And what might be the most important thing is their name and where they went to school. Know who they are. Get familiar with who they are, where they fit in with the team that you're reporting on. Because here's what's going to happen. I think you've heard me use this euphemism before, but Joe Sweatsock is your average reader. They don't know who the guy is when he's drafted. They don't remember who he is in August. What they want to know are the basics. They don't want to know about his laser rocket arm or all these scouting cliches or anything like that. Does this guy, in a general sense, does this guy help my team win a Super Bowl? That's what Joe Sweatsock wants to know. So give him the basics. How does he fit in? Does this work? What do other people say about him? What do you think about him? You're looking to give general notes. So in that sense, you're taking those general notes, but you need to look at it from a 10,000-foot level, not as if you're writing this for a general manager to read, which ironically is not the type of scouting report that gets submitted to a general manager anyway. Don't overdo it. Don't try to oversell the guy. Even the guys that do this for a living, the guys that really obsess over it, and the ones that make it kind of a badge of honor to show off how much tape they watch, they're probably the only ones that remember every single player that was drafted. And it's because there are a lot of players that you just don't know in the NFL. It's a very big league. There are a lot of players who are out there. Most of them, their biggest highlight of their career is draft day when they get drafted, because they have a spotlight for about 18 seconds on ESPN. That's probably the only amount of time they'll ever get. Right. Don't try to overdo it. Do they fit in? Does this fit in with the team's general plan? Do they add to the depth chart? And a fair question after probably round 4, will they make the team? Are they going to be on the team? I'd say, reasonably, if we were to guess, the highest draft pick who will get cut is probably in the 4th round. Mm-hmm. And 4th round tends to be kind of a medical or character concern round. It's sort of the higher ceiling but very low floor type of prospect that gets drafted in the 4th round. Beyond that, though, there are 5th, 6th, 7th round guys that get cut all the time that might not even make the team. That's half the draft. So you can't put too much into really truly analyzing who all the players are before you see them on an NFL field. And that's absolutely not to say 6th round picks can't make it in the NFL. In fact, you talk to scouts, they'll tell you the 6th round is kind of like, these are going to be solid pro level players. They just don't have any, high upside. They're guys that can play. Typically, they're guys that can play right now. They can be special teams components, deep roster types of guys.
Right.
They value the 6th round maybe even more than they do the 5th. But overall, you're looking to get, from a writing perspective, you're looking to get a sense of who they are, and you want to communicate that out to the audience as best you can without overwhelming them with a bunch of scouting jargon and misrepresenting the audience as somebody that works in professional football. They just want to know who the dude is and whether or not he can help them win a Super Bowl.
We brought up the scouts a couple of times here. The Ravens include the scouts in the room when they draft. Do you know how the Steelers approach that with the scouts?
The Steelers really keep that under lock and key. I know in the past their college and pro scouting directors have been in the room, but everything I've always heard was that it was really kind of back in the day at least, it was kind of a Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin type of thing. They involved the pro scouting coordinator, the college scouting coordinator when needed, and the position coaches. They listened to the input of the coordinator and the position coaches for what they needed, because they all give them different assignments of what to scout and what to look for. Some coaches feel particularly strong about this guy or that guy, but we don't hear about the ones that they feel strongly about that don't get drafted. I know famously there was a bit of there was some consternation of what happened inside the draft room when the Steelers had their 3rd round comp pick for Mike Wallace, when Mike Wallace signed back with the Dolphins back in 2014 or 2013, whatever that was. They got the pick in 14. Their 3rd round pick going into it, to the point where his name was on the card, was somebody different than who they drafted. So there was some confusion in there. This is a true story. I've heard this from several people. Martavis Bryant's name was on the card for their 3rd round pick, but they selected Dree Archer with the 3rd round pick. They would end up taking Bryant with the 4th round pick, but what I had heard was Todd Haley was particularly insistent upon drafting Archer. And it sounds like they had a consensus thought that they wanted Bryant in the 3rd round. Haley really wanted Archer, and it went Haley's way in that case. Fortunately for Haley, they got Bryant anyway, because Dree Archer didn't exactly have a banner career. It's hard to project where everybody is going to go. Everybody gives an opinion on something, and a lot of it is really just going to end up being feel. And you're going to be, depending on how you want to classify wrong, there are guys that you're going to draft who aren't going to work out very well for a myriad reasons. It's not just because Todd Haley was wrong that Dree Archer didn't do anything, and Dree Archer didn't fail because Todd Haley thought he was a lot better than he was. There's a bunch of stuff that goes into that. So it's difficult to determine exactly who to take, but there's a lot of input from a lot of people. I think Baltimore is smart to involve the scouts. You want to go over those details and make sure that you have everything. I might argue, however, that does kind of create, paralysis by analysis, just in the sense that you can go over 1 trillion things about a player. The reality is you're not going to know until you get them out on the field, and that's kind of the rub of the whole thing. You've got to have as much information as possible, but be able to just make an instinctive call of whether or not he's going to adapt to your coaching style and he can play the game the way that you want him to play it. And he'll want to do that, and he'll stay hardworking after you pay him money. He'll fit in with the culture of your team. He'll fit in with the city. His family will be good with it. There are lots of things that will go into a young man's maturation and growth, and you can't control a lot of that. So having as much info as you can, I think, is probably the best approach.
My friend, always a pleasure. You know that. Thank you so much, as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection, imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.